Welcome to DayZ. DayZ is an open-world multiplayer hardcore survival game that has the player spawn in Chernarus, a post-apocalyptic zombie and player-filled East European-based map. The player spawns on the shore and is incentivized to move northwest due to the loot being better and more rare the more inland you go. Along the way, you face many challenges such as starvation, dehydration, sickness, animals, zombies, and most importantly, other players. Player interaction in DayZ is, in my opinion, what makes the game so unique. When first encountering a player, one must take into account how they want to interact with the said player depending on many circumstances, like how much loot do you have to risk, and how much loot does the other player have to risk. Where on the map am I? Am I in a military base or a starting location? In other words, both players must evaluate the situation and act accordingly. Some players tend to be more aggressive regardless of loot or location, while others tend to enjoy friendship and trying to make adventures and partnerships with survivors that they meet on the way. This is all affected by the fact that the more inland one goes, the more guns and ammo and gear, but the less food, water, and people. This leads to the shores having abundance of ungeared fresh spawns that are more likely to want to team up with other fresh spawns through the means of voice chat due to them having less to lose and a lot to gain, while the inland has low amounts of players, but the players that are there are more likely looking for a fight as they have more to lose due to the time it took them to get there and the gear that they have obtained. This interesting player-on-player dynamic is what makes DayZ so great. You never quite know what to expect from others and yourself. Sometimes when encountering another player, it is kill on sight, while other times both of you seem to want to team up, and other times you'll be calmly walking through the forest and your game will suddenly go black. Loot. Loot in DayZ is based on 4 zones of rarity seen on this map. The more inland you go, the rarer the loot is. On a given map, only a certain number of each item will spawn, with certain items only being able to spawn in these rare loot zones. You can see every single item and how many are able to spawn on a given server at wobo.tools. These loot zones are then separated into various types of loot, such as policed, medical, and hunting, where certain items are only able to spawn. This adds a sense of rarity to certain gear and weapons, as only so many players can have a specific item. This adds another sensation that makes DayZ such a great game and that newer players feel a lot of, and that's adrenaline. Since you can spend dozens of hours on a single character traveling throughout Chernarus, having various good and bad player interactions while finding rare items, you will feel a genuine sense of adrenaline when your character's life is in danger, all while hearing the sound of distant gunshots, wondering if that player is headed in your direction or if you will be next. You really don't want to lose the amount of work and time that you have put into your character, so when you very abruptly enter a fight, your hands will sweat and shake while your heart beats. Not a lot of games can capture this sense of intense adrenaline that some people, when properly immersed into the game, will greatly feel. You'll never know when you'll lose the character that you have dumped 30 play hours into. It truly adds to what makes DayZ so amazing. For the more survival-based aspect of the game, the player has to worry about food, water, blood, health, and sickness. Food. When finding food, the player has to be careful about what the food is. Eating human fat or human meat will give you a disease called kuru, which causes your character to randomly twitch. Food is mostly found in residential buildings or can be harvested and cooked from the various animals. A lack of food will kill the player by causing the health to decrease over time, and an abundance of food will cause the character to throw up. Water in DayZ is most safely consumed at various wells and towns. These wells provide safe-to-drink water, but increase your chances of running into other players who are also thirsty. Water drank straight from ponds can make the player sick, which I will discuss later. Various containers can be filled with water and drank at a later date. A lack of water will kill the player over time by the draining of health. Blood. Blood will always be full unless shot, cut, or transfused upon. Bullets and stabs take an immediate 100 blood loss and will give the player 1 cut each time shot or stabbed. These bleeds will cause a bleed rate depending on where they were cut or shot. A cut to the hands will give a bleed rate of 36 blood loss a minute out of the default and starting 5,000 blood units. A cut to the limbs will give a blood loss of 216. A cut to the head or torso will give a rate of 360 blood loss per minute. Transfusion has to be done with an IV start kit and a blood bag. This can be done by either the player themselves or another survivor. This blood bag can later be used to restore lost blood. When a player receives a bleed or cut, they can reduce or fix the bleed in various ways. These include rags and bandages. Bandages being the quickest option to heal a bleed. The more blood you lose, the more the player's screen will lose color and go gray, which will slowly return to color as blood is regained at a rate of between 0.075 to 0.3 per second, depending on if the character has fulfilled water and energy needs. The blood bags can also be used to troll players through the means of transfusion between incompatible blood types. In DayZ, just like real life, each player has a different blood type, and the compatibilities between players is accurately depicted just like real life. So if in a game, a player that has a blood type AB positive gives blood to a player with a blood type of B positive, the receiving player will simply die, which allows for great trolling. Health. Health in DayZ is impacted by gunshots, melee damage, food, water, and will drop to 0 if a player runs out of blood. Food. Food is indicated by 5 stages seen on your HUD as an apple. Fully white apple means that you have between 3,500 to 5,000 energy. Half full white apple means that you have between 800 to 3,500 energy. Yellow apple means that you have between 300 and 800 energy. Red apple means that you have between 1 to 299 energy. And finally, blinking apple means that you have no energy and your character will begin to lose health at approximately 2 to 7 health a minute out of 100. This is similar but more severe with lack of water. Water also has 5 stages seen by the bottle on your HUD. Full white bottle indicates between 3,500 to 5,000 water. Half full white bottle indicates 800 to 3,500 water. Yellow indicates between 300 to 800 water. Red indicates between 100 to 299. And the blinking bottle means you have no water. When it has a red icon, it will drain health at 0.02 health per second, with a blinking icon draining health at 6 to 11 health a minute. The amount of water lost by player is impacted by player action, more specifically, standing, walking, jogging, or sprinting. Standing results in a water loss of 0.01 to 0.02 water loss per second out of a maximum of 5,000. Walking results in a water loss per second of 0.1 to 0.2. Jogging results in a water loss of 0.3 to 0.6, while sprinting results in the greatest loss of 0.6 to 1.2. Cholera and salmonella, 2 diseases in DayZ, affect water consumption or depletion, with cholera draining your water at a rate of 0.05 to 0.5, and the player will vomit and lose water and food if the amount of water goes to or over 450 units. The last thing that affects water and indirectly health is temperature. If a player is very hot, this will result in a loss of 0.4 water per second. A hot player will lose anywhere from 0 to 0.4 water per second. While cold and very cold, the player does not lose any water. Melee damage. Melee damage affects health depending on the type of hit and the type of weapon a player is hit with. With each melee weapon, a player can either heavy hit or light hit, with the heavy hit resulting in more damage. It would take ages to go over the stats for every single melee weapon, as there are about 43 of them, but generally, large melee weapons such as shovels and firefighter axes do roughly 25 health damage and 40 shock damage. Let me explain shock damage real quick. With enough shock damage, a player will go unconscious, that being below 25, with a starting value of 100. After a player goes unconscious, their screen will go black, and they will not be able to do anything while the character is on the ground. After anywhere from 25 to 50 seconds, a player will wake back up, and whatever item that was in their hands will now be on the ground. Now back to melee damage. Sharper melee damage weapons such as hatchets, knives, and swords give a hit player a bleed alongside a certain amount of shock and health damage. Generally speaking, the larger a melee weapon is, the more damage and shock it will do. Heavy hits will result in roughly double the amount of health and shock damage when compared to light hits. And while I'm on the topic of melee damage, let me give an overview of the zombies in DayZ. Zombies in DayZ spawn mostly around buildings. These zombies are usually not threats when there's low amounts of them. They become life-threatening very quickly in groups. The most efficient way to deal with zombies is to sneak past them or kill them with melee damage and make sure to block their incoming hits. Another tactic is to trap them in a nearby building. This includes running into a building with the zombie following, and running out of the building and immediately closing the door once you are out of the building and while the zombie is still in. This is not advised when dealing with multiple zombies, as they can block you into a corner. Third way is to just fucking shoot them. This also isn't advised, as it's unnecessary noise and unnecessary use of ammo. The last thing that affects players' health is, of course, gunshots. Gunshots are the easiest way to lose your health very quickly. DayZ's ballistic system is unique and a little complex. Basically, bullets do their health and shock damage depending on their velocity, and as long as the player health reaches 0, they will die alongside shock damage, which I previously explained. This means a 308 shot out of a blaze at point blank will deal 143 health and shock damage, while a 308 coming out of a longhorn at point blank will deal 109 health and shock damage. Since the damage bullets deal is affected by bullet velocity, this means that the further away a player is shot from, the less damage the player will take. For example, see this graph of the Blaze's damage loss over distance. This loss is different for all of the countless guns and ammos in DayZ, which you can effectively look for yourself at wobo.tool's website found in the description of this video. This is also impacted by the various hitboxes on a player. The torso is a 1-to-1 translator of damage, which means if the torso is shot with a bullet that does 100 damage, 100 damage will be applied. This changes when looking at the arm hitbox, as they only take in 10% of the damage from said bullet. In other words, they take in a 10-to-1 ratio. This is better explained in Wobo's video that is also linked in the description. But back to health loss due to gunshots. Most assault rifles will kill or knock out a player with one shot to the head due to the head hitbox boosting incoming health damage by 200% and boosting incoming shock damage by 300%, which only applies to gunshots. On another side note, DayZ has another hitbox inside of the head, and that is the brain. If the brain takes the slightest amount of damage, it will instantly kill the player, even 0.00001. Now the interesting thing about this is that helmets rid of the existence of the brain hitbox, which means most helmets can take about 2 pistol rounds before they kill a player, and sometimes can even take a rifle round before killing a player, but it will still knock them out. Assault rifles will also kill a player with 2 shots to the torso, which the torso hitbox goes all the way through the neck, by the way. Most pistols will 3-shot a person to the chest and 1-shot a person to the brain. Which remember, if a player has a helmet on, good luck with a 1-tap to the head. Rifles such as the M70, Mosin, and Blaze, up to about 360 meters will 1-tap a player to the chest. Every weapon can be viewed more in depth at wobo.tools. Players can reduce incoming health and shock damage by wearing armor. The stab vest, police vest, and plate carrier are the only vests that reduce health and shock damage, and their values are seen on screen here thanks to Asmondian's infographics. Yeah, that sounds right. Sickness. Sickness in DayZ can be very annoying to deal with. You know when you are sick when you see this icon on your HUD. There are 9 diseases in DayZ, some easily preventable and some not so much. Brain prion disease, or more commonly known as Kuru, as I discussed earlier, is contracted by eating human fat or meat. This disease has no cure and causes the player to uncontrollably laugh and jitter. Chemical poisoning. Chemical poisoning is contracted by either drinking gasoline, eating rotten food, or unknown food cans. This disease will clear up with time, but before then, the player will vomit. Cholera. Cholera is contracted by drinking unclean water. Cholera can be cured with tetracycline or multivitamin pills. Until then, the player will experience vomiting, blurry vision, dehydration, and fever. The common cold. The common cold is contracted by either being in cold weather for long periods or by another survivor that already has the disease. This disease can be cured with tetracycline or multivitamin pills, but until then the player will randomly, audibly sneeze. Hemolytic reaction. This disease I have already discussed and is caused by incompatible blood transfusions. This disease results in instant death. Influenza. Influenza is the same as the common cold, with the only difference being that you will also cough and have a fever alongside sneezing. Salmonella, or salmonellosis. Salmonella is contracted by the consumption of raw meat, rotten food, and eating or drinking with bloody hands, which you can prevent with gloves or by washing your hands before you eat at wells or ponds. Salmonella can be cured with charcoal tablets or multivitamin pills, but until then the player will vomit, lose health, make audible pain noises, and have blurry vision. Wound infection. Wound infection is contracted by healing a bleed with an undisinfected rag, bandage, or sewing kit. This can be cured with tetracycline pills, and if you very recently noticed the infection, disinfectant will work. The player will experience health loss, sudden movements, fever, blurry vision, water loss, audible pain noises, and slowed stamina regain. Gas poisoning. Gas poisoning is contracted by entering one of the contamination zones, as seen on the map here. Quick side note, these zones offer very rare loot that is only found in these gas zones, and these zones also can randomly hit any of these areas seen on the map with an audible artillery sound heard 60 seconds before one of these areas will become filled with gas. The only way to avoid gas poisoning is with NBC hood, NBC jacket, NBC gloves, NBC pants, NBC boots, and any type of these gas masks. Gas poisoning can be cured with a blood bag containing blood that was collected outside of the gas zone and not coming from someone with gas poisoning. The effects of gas poisoning are coughing, vomiting, bleeding, unconsciousness, health loss, and death. Stuffed stomach. Stuffed stomach isn't necessarily a disease, but will cause the player to vomit if they consume too much water or food in a short amount of time. Lastly, stamina. Stamina in DayZ works just like any other game. You keep full stamina unless you sprint or jump, and then you regain it at a medium pace. DayZ is different because when your character starts to become heavy, depending on the amount of gear and items on your character's max stamina will be reduced. In extreme cases, this will prevent the player from hopping over large walls, as their stamina cap is so low that they simply cannot have enough stamina unless they drop some items. When a player is heavy, it also makes it harder for that player to be mobile and to be able to run away from fights if need be. It is recommended to always have at least half of your stamina bar available at any moment in case you suddenly take fire. Thank you for watching. Let me know if I missed anything down below. Thank you to Wobo, the DayZ fandom, and DayZ itself for providing the information in this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see in future videos in the comments below.
Fucking relax, man. Relax. I'm friendly. I'm friendly as fuck. I put my hands. Yo, chill, man. Chill. What's up, buddy? Chill, man. Chill. I'm friendly.